of all government revenues. It's been higher in the past, but that's what it's been over the last few years. But critically, about 80% of export revenues. And the diamond market, I think as everybody knows, is not in great shape at the moment. Our exports, of which about 60% go to the USA, have been, and the next largest market has been China, our exports have been badly affected by competition from lab-grown diamonds, and now the USA has imposed tariffs on all diamonds, and everybody else's diamonds, and the Chinese consumers have turned away from diamonds as a form of luxury consumption. So our exports are doing quite badly, and that has affected the economy and government and the balance of payments. So it just reinforces the need to diversify. We've been talking about, some of us economists have been talking about diversification for many years, about how it must be pursued, but now we're hitting the brick wall, so that now there's no choice. Maybe before there was a choice and we chose not to do it, but now there's no choice. So we need to diversify into sectors that create employment opportunities. Remember, diamonds have been big, but they've never created that many jobs. So we need activities that can create more jobs, and that can be manufacturing, tourism, and a whole range of service activities. It might be financial services, business services, professional services, IT, etc. So activities should preferably be employment intensive, but they should also be export focused. As I mentioned, diamonds have contributed about 80% of our exports, far bigger than their contribution to government revenues and GDP. And if they disappear, or even if they don't disappear, but they shrink by a half or 2/3, the biggest impact will be felt by our exports and the balance of payments, and that will in turn have an effect on the currency. And so it's very important that we develop activities which are export focused, not just to earn foreign currency, but there's a particular advantage if you can export, and that is that exporting encourages productivity and competitiveness, and that's where income comes from, being productive and competitive. Unlike selling domestically, and especially if you're selling to government, you don't have to be efficient or productive to sell to government. You just have to be lucky to get a contract. So, unfortunately, all these firms that are dependent on the government market, which are far too many, as we're now seeing, are not encouraged to be competitive or efficient, which is not, in the long term, going to help grow. So we need diversification into these whole range of activities, preferably export focused. That can be exports to the region, it can be exports to the world. It doesn't, there's all sorts of options. Okay, so where's the capital going to come from, particularly for startups? Well, although government is struggling at the moment with revenues, luckily we do have quite a lot of domestic investment capacity, and particularly the pension fund sector. So the total pension fund assets is about 150 billion pula. That's an awful lot of money. It's about 11 or 12 billion US dollars. It's a lot. It's more than half the size of the economy. The economy is about 260 billion pula, and the pension fund assets amount to about 150 billion. And a lot of that's invested offshore for various reasons, but the proportion that must be invested domestically is being increased by the regulator, and by 2027, 50% of that 150 billion will have to be invested domestically. So that's 75 billion pula, so 5 or 6 billion US dollars. And some of that money is obviously going to go into your standard pension fund assets like listed shares on the Botswana Stock Exchange and government bonds and property, but the rules also require that a proportion, and I'm not quite sure of the number, it might be 10%, portion must be invested in what they call alternative assets. And so that is not your standard plain vanilla pension fund assets. And those alternative assets include venture capital funds, private equity, startups, infrastructure funds, etc. So that's going to amount to maybe something in the region of 5 or 7 billion pula available for investment in, as I say, these alternative, more innovative types of assets. So on one level, the finance is available, but what are the barriers to getting it invested in the right place? Well, it's not about availability of money in the aggregate sense. The capital is there. It's more about the microstructure of the market through which those funds would flow. There's a few regulatory issues, but I think mainly it's about an improved understanding of so any market has lots of participants, and for the market to work, the participants must understand each other and what the needs are of each of the other participants. So I think what is required, particularly in this current context, is obviously we need the right investment opportunities, the right projects looking for investment. When I say right, I mean offering the right combination of risk and return. And just going back to the export point, good projects will have scalability. Botswana is too small to offer scalability for most projects. So really good projects will have the capacity to scale outside the country. So those will be the best ideas, the ones that have a lot of growth potential by moving beyond Botswana, beyond the borders. So we need the right investment opportunities, the right projects, and the ability to link funders with those who need funding. And I think at the moment, what we're seeing is sort of they're talking past each other, because there are funders, and there are people who need funding, but I think we don't have enough of events like this where the funders and the entrepreneurs meet each other. And I think there's also, and that meetup's only going to work if the entrepreneurs understand what the funders need and the funders understand what the entrepreneurs can offer, because obviously the entrepreneurs have to package their projects in a way that is attractive to funders. You know, that's the right type of pitch. And putting together the right type of pitch is not easy. You can't just go and say, I've got a brilliant idea. I know Mukenzi did, and he got his $200,000 out of the bank. I wish he hadn't told that story, because you're going to think it's easy. It's not easy. But you've got to be able to present your ideas and your projects, and maybe things you've started up already, in a way that talks the right language to the funders. And the funders also need to understand, they need to have the right understanding of risk, because all startups are risky, and all growth activities, all innovations are risky. And I think that we may be, while we have the money and we have the fund managers, I'm not convinced we have the fund managers that have the right understanding of risk and the ability to drill down into projects and to really understand the risk that those projects offer. And sure,